Welcome to the world of the SE-5 1000. You are either embarking on a very exciting journey of discovering the nature of the holographic universe, or are already a contributing researcher that has been making our lives worthwhile. Since 1987, Don, Paris, and I have been working with the SE-5, and we have been so excited to receive all the phone calls from international ports detailing research data, amazing results, miracles that have given us the greatest joy and are probably the most valuable experience in our work with the SE-5. Thank you for joining the researchers worldwide in the field of the SE-5 1000 and contributing with your knowledge to the expansion of our human potential. By working with the SE-5 and practitioners of similar instruments, we are contributing to the awareness that healing and transformation happens from the informational field down into the physical. You are a contributing researcher, and I want to thank all the people who've contributed over the last 22 years and more, since 1987 worldwide, to the body of knowledge that we are now able to present to you. We encourage you to work with seeds, with plants, to give yourself absolute 100% feedback that what you do has results. And your trust and your abilities will increase with time to create magical, magnificent, wondrous results for you and clients worldwide. I would like to welcome you to the exciting world of the SE-5 1000.
Now, before we get started, I would like to tell you a little bit about what the SE-5 1000 is and also what it is not. The SE-5 1000 is a scientific instrument designed to measure and balance intrinsic data fields, or IDFs. Intrinsic data fields are informational fields that we believe surround and penetrate all living and non-living things. What the SE-5 1000 is not is a diagnostic tool for medical conditions. Now, I know a lot of people look at these descriptions that you'll see in our manuals and our books, where it talks about either disease patterns, cells, organs, things like that. And these names are IDF correlations for the intrinsic data fields that we're trying to measure. They are not, however, the medical condition. So if you see the word diabetes, it means the tuning that we're looking for is a tuning of an intrinsic data field that we hope correlates with the physical disease. But we don't know that, and that's why this is an area of experimental research. So if you want to have a medical diagnosis or a medical treatment, you should see a licensed medical professional. With that said, let's go ahead and get started. Let's have a look at what's inside the SE-5 case. To open the case, pull on the two latches in the front of the case and open the lid. Inside you'll find your infrared scanning probe, and you can just set this to the side and we'll come back to that later. This is the audio cable used for inputting audio into the SE-5. And you can just set each one of these accessories to the side, and I'll go through each one of them step by step so you know exactly how to use them. This is your USB cable used for connecting the SE-5 to the computer. This is your Polaroid camera used for taking digital pictures and also then for printing the pictures and using them for sales inside the SE-5. This is your Polaroid printer used for printing out your samples from your digital photos. This is your SE-5 wall adapter. Now the SE-5 will run on 9 volts from this wall adapter. It'll run from a battery which is inside the SE-5, which later I'll show you how to change, and also will run from the USB power when you plug it into your computer. These are your glassine envelopes. They're used for storing samples, such as a hair sample, and also for use with the Polaroid pictures that you'll print out from your Polaroid printer. Let's take the SE-5 out and set it to the side, and we'll come back to that in a moment. Underneath the SE-5, you'll find an input plate, and the input plate is used for placing large samples on top of the plate that are too large to fit inside the cell. This is your output cable. It's made from electroluminescence cable, which means that it will use light to transfer the IDF patterns. Now let's put the SE-5 case away and set it to the side. Now we're ready to turn on the SE-5 1000, but before we do, let's discharge any extra static electricity that might be on our body. Now I'm working on a table that has metal legs, so I'm going to touch the metal leg just to make sure that any static electricity would be discharged first. Then I'm going to touch the amplitude knob, because if I do have any extra static electricity, it would be safely discharged here, and then I can turn on the SE-5 1000. Now it says clearing cell, please wait, and then the screen goes into a blank mode and it says standalone mode, main programs. So then I can look through the main menus by going with the down arrow to the biofield program or the custom programs, or I can go back to the main programs. To use your power adapter with the SE-5 1000, first plug the power adapter into a power strip and then plug the other end of the power adapter into the SE-5 1000 on the back. Now you'll notice there are two knots, one at each end of the power cable. Do not untie these knots as they block negativity from the incoming power line. This is your input plate, used for testing samples that are too large to fit into the cell. When you handle the input plate, handle it like a CD on the edges so you don't get your fingerprints on the metal or on the top. And then just slide it into the cell, straight in until it stops. Then you can place your samples directly on the input plate itself and take your readings. Next, I'd like to show you how to use your infrared scanning probe. So go ahead and get your probe out. To put the probe in, you're going to put it on the front of the SE-5 in the right-hand jack. Just slide the plastic part in first, and then turn the nut clockwise until it stops. And don't over-tighten. Now to activate your probe, you're going to press on the normal scan button, press it one time into the scan position, and that will turn on your probe and activate the light. Next, I'd like to show you how to scan a chart, and I'm going to use a chart from the advanced training course. So I'm going to open up my book to the auricular acupuncture point chart, which is the acupuncture points along the ear. I'm going to use my scanning probe, and I'm going to first go across the top of the chart until I get a stick. I get a stick at D, and then I'm going to go down the side of the chart until I get a stick. I get a stick between D and E. Then I'm going to look at those coordinates and see which points are nearby in this area. Number 54 is the closest, and sure enough, that's where I get my stick. But I could also test the other points just to make sure that that is the exact point. It's point number 54. So then I can go on the chart and look up point number 54, and it is the pelvis cavum point. Now another way to use the scanning probe would be to scan a list. For example, let's say I have a list of reagents here. I can touch the first reagent and rub the plate, go to the second one, third one, and in this way determine any IDF compatibility with the name on the page with my subject who's in the cell. And I get a stick on this one on wormwood. And that's how you use the scanning probe to go down a page or any kind of list that you want to scan. Next, I'd like to show you how to connect your output cable. It's very easy to connect. You just slide it onto the BNC plug on the back and then just turn it a quarter turn. When you press the measure balance button first, it just goes into the balance mode and it says BAL. Now this is just for normal balancing, and it'll just send the corrective frequencies without the output cable. When you press it again, then the light cable comes on. As you can see, mine has lit up. And it'll say BWL, which stands for balance with light. Now when I press it again, it'll change to BWP, which means balance with pulse. And you can see my light cable is then pulsing with light. So one way you can use your output cable is to balance your groceries when you bring them home. You can just simply wrap your cable around your grocery bag, and the field extends out about 3 feet in all directions, so you don't have to have it exactly wrapped all the way around, but generally either set the bags on top of the cable or wrap it around a little bit. And I'm going to run the subtle balance program on mine, so I'm going to dial to 50% because it has both positive and negative tunings in it. And then I'm going to load the program, and I'm going to switch into the balance mode with the light cable on. Now, you could also, for added effect or added energy, you could put it in the pulse mode while it's balancing the groceries. To use your audio cable to connect audio to the SE-5, first you'll need an audio source. In this case, I'm going to use the headphone jack from my laptop. So I plug one end into the laptop, and the other end will go into the front of the SE-5 here on this audio input jack. Like that. Now what this is used for is sending sound frequencies along with your balancing sessions. For example, in the SE-5 software you can set up specific sound frequencies to send along with the balancing sessions when you're in the balancing mode. Next, I'd like to show you how to change the battery in your SE-5 1000. There's a small tab on the front of the SE-5 here. You'll press that with one hand while lifting the battery compartment off with the other hand, like that. Simply push on the battery and lift it out, and then put the new battery in the same way. To put the battery compartment back on, put it on the back side first because there's a little lip there, and then slide it down into the slot like that. To replicate any remedy with the SE-5 1000 is very simple. Just place the original remedy on the left-hand coil, the input side, then place the bottle that you'd like to replicate into on the output coil on the right-hand side. Simply press the 7-pointed star and the potentization takes place. Now you've just replicated your IDFs from your original remedy into your new bottle. This is your Polaroid digital camera that comes with your SE-5 1000. To install the batteries, turn it over on the bottom and press down on the little battery compartment and slide it to the right, and then it'll flip open. Inside you'll see a little diagram that shows how the batteries go in, so follow those directions with one battery going up and the other battery going down according to the diagram. Then press down on the battery compartment and slide it back to the right. To turn on your camera, press on the little button in the middle on the top until the lens opens. Now when I take a photo of my sample, I like to take it lengthwise because you get a little bit more of the biofield captured in the photo when you're taking the picture. So if I was going to take a photo of my SE-5 1000, I would hold it up and take it lengthwise like this, and then press on the button on the top until it flashes, and then I get a picture. And that could be a sample. Having a sample of your SE-5 can come in handy if you ever want to clear it of X-rays, for example, after taking it through the airport. Once you've taken a photo, if you want to view the photo, there's a little green arrow at the top of the camera on the back. Press and hold that down, and there's your photo. To turn off the camera, press on the little button again on the top and hold it down until the lens retracts. Next, I'd like to show you how to print a photo with your Polaroid camera and your printer. First, you need to turn on your camera, so go ahead and press the on button. Then press on the small green arrow on the top, like that. And then press on the button just below it to open your menu. Now scroll across and then down until you get to the Tools, the Setup window. Then press Enter in the middle. And then scroll down until you get to USB. Then press Enter, and it's going to say Computer or Printer, and you want to scroll down until you see Printer, and then press Enter in the middle. Then you're ready to connect your USB cable to your printer. So connect one end of your printer cable into your camera. And it'll only fit in one direction. If it doesn't fit in, just turn it over. Then plug it into the camera. First, turn on your Polaroid printer. You'll see a little green light come on. And then put the larger end into the Polaroid printer. And it'll only fit in one direction. If it doesn't fit in, just turn it over. Put the larger end into the Polaroid printer, like that. It'll say connecting. After you've connected, the Pick Bridge menu will show. So then go down to Image and press Enter, and then choose Single, because you just want to print one picture. Up will come the first picture. If you press on the right-hand arrow, it'll move to the next picture. So press on Setup and then tell it how many pictures you'd like to print. You press on the right-hand side of your menu and it'll say 1. Then scroll down to go backwards and press Enter. And then go down again to go back one level. Press Enter again. And now push on your left-hand button to go out of that image and press on the up arrow to go to Print. Just press Enter. Now just press Enter again. Your image starts printing. You should see a small blinking light on your printer saying that it's getting data from your camera. And then the photo will print out. After the picture has printed, take it out of the printer by holding it on the edges of the photo and then place it inside of a glassine envelope. Don't get your fingerprints on the photo itself. And then you can write the person's name on the flap on the back. Now I'm going to show you how to get a stick on your SE-5. The stick response is a neuromuscular response that happens when we rub our fingers on the plate, and when we get to a resonance peak, it causes a slight neuromuscular response as well as a galvanic skin response. And this response is what we call the stick. The stick is what we use to determine where the resonance peak is of a specific IDF pattern. So scroll down until you get to Main Programs, then press Enter, and up comes the first program is Stick No Stick, Stick Practice, and go ahead and press Enter again. And it says Auto or Manual. We're going to use auto, so make sure it says auto and then you can press enter. And it says balancing time. We'll let it go about 4 seconds. So scroll down until you get to 4 seconds. Then press enter. Delay, we'll leave that at 1 second, so that's okay. Number of cycles. Let's practice, let's say, about 10 times. So scroll up using the up arrow until you get to the number 10. And then press enter. So when it says no stick, then you want to start rubbing on the plate until it changes. And you can see my instrument actually started sliding around. So when it says no stick again, take your fingers off the plate and let's wait for the next cycle. You don't want to do it from stick to no stick. Okay, it says no stick, rubbing on the plate, and it just grabs the fingers. Now this is a very good way to test your stick in the beginning, is to get a slippery piece of material and put it underneath of your SE-5, and so that when you get a stick, it will move the whole instrument when it grabs your fingers. Let's try it once more. Wait for it to say no stick again. Okay, no stick. Rub on the plate, and you can put quite a bit of pressure on the, there it says stick. Okay, see how my fingers just stop right on the plate? Now some people have very, very dry skin, and for those people you might want to use a little bit of baby oil on the ends of the fingers. People that have very, very oily skin might want to use a little baby powder. On your CD that came with your SE-5 1000, you'll find a complete copy of the Biofield Research Manual and the Beginning Training Manual. Now I've printed mine out and put it together in a binder like this, and you might want to do that also for reference. So if you haven't done that yet, go ahead and print out the Beginning Training Manual and I'll proceed from there. Before we begin any analysis with the SE-5 1000, we want to go through the initial tests. There are 5 different tests that we want to check to make sure that our environment is clear and that there are no blockages from working with the SE-5. So use your down arrow and select Main Programs, then select Enter. Then scroll down until you get to Initial Tests. Then press Enter. It says Auto or Manual. In this case we want to use Manual. So go ahead and press Enter. It should come up with the tuning 99996900 blockages. Your settings should be on Measure, Normal, and we're going to use the 100 scale. So it should say 0.0 if you're dialed all the way down. Now this is a negative tuning, so you'll want to start at 0. So if you haven't already, go ahead and dial your amplitude knob all the way down to 0, counterclockwise. Begin by rubbing on the plate, and I'm going to dial up until I feel that stick. There, you see how the instrument sort of started moving around and my fingers stuck right on the plate. So mine is 0.4%, which is very low, which means there are no blockages in working with the SE-5 1000. Now if you find that you have over 15%, perhaps it is better for you then to work at a different time or perhaps on a different subject. So I'm going to dial back down to 0, press my down arrow, and it goes to 8722119 interference A. So I'm going to dial up from 0, 6.9. Again, this is below 15%, which means that I'm well within the tolerance for interferences. Now if you find you have interference A, B, C, or D that are above 15%, you might want to find a different area to work in, a different place, or sometimes even just turning the instrument in a different direction will clear the interference. These interferences could be electromagnetic, they could be geopathic stresses, or it could even be negative thought forms. So if you find that your interferences are over 15%, don't try to balance them, just go ahead and try a different location to work in. So I'm going to press the down arrow again, interference B. I'm going to start from 0. This one's 5.9. So there's a little bit of interference, but really not enough to affect my readings. So I'm going to press the down arrow again, interference C. This one's 1.2. It's very low, so that's good. And last one, interference D, this one's 0.8. So all 5 of my tests have passed for blockages, interference A, B, C, and D, so it's okay for me to continue doing my analysis. Just make sure if you're over 15% on any one of those readings that you might want to find a different location to work in, or perhaps work on your subject at a different time or choose a different subject. Next, I'd like to go through a basic analysis using the subtle balance program. You'll find it in Roman numeral number 7 on page 22 of your beginning training manual. If you haven't printed it out, like I have, into a notebook, then you'll find it on your software disk under the PDF file of the beginning training manual, part 1. So go ahead and open that up, or print out just that page if you'd like to, and then we'll follow along in the book and with the program at the same time. So I've opened up my book to Roman numeral 7, page 22, or if you want, you can just print out that page and use it as your chart. I've already loaded the program, the subtle balance program, in my SE-5, and I'm ready to take my first measurement. Now, your settings should be at measure, normal, and 100%. The first tuning, 9062755, says align chakras, and if you look in your chart, it's a positive tuning, has a plus in front of it, so we're going to start at 100%. If it's a negative tuning, you start at 0. If it's a positive tuning, you start at 100. So this one's a positive tuning, so I'm going to start at 100%, and I'm going to start dialing down from 100 until I get a stick. And I get a stick at 95.3. So I make a note of that on my chart, 95.3%. Now, this is not very low. Normally I would be looking for a tuning that is like below 85% in order to balance. But just for the sake of demonstration, I'm going to balance this tuning. I'm going to dial up to 100% because that's where I want the tuning to go to. And I'm going to switch from measure to balance by pressing on the measure balance button one time. So now instead of receiving the intrinsic data field information patterns from my system, it's now sending the corrective IDF patterning to my biofields. So we'll wait just a couple of seconds and we'll see how it turns out. So now I've let it balance for some time. I'm going to switch back balance to measure, and in order to get back to measure from balance, you need to press 3 times, because first is balance with the light cable. If you have your light cable connected, it will light up, and then balance with a pulse, and that pulses your light cable on and off, as I've shown you before in one of the demonstrations. So press it one more time and it goes back to measure, and I can take a measurement from 100, and now it's at 100%, which is where I want it to be. So I press my down arrow. The next tuning is 9424459, oral balance. Again, this is a positive tuning, so I'm going to start at 100. And this one's about 95% as well. So I'm not going to bother balancing this one. I'll keep going until I find something that's more than 15% out of balance. So I press the down arrow. Now the next one is autotoxicity. It's a negative tuning. If you notice in your book it has a minus in front of it. Now in the manual, most of the tunings you'll find, if they don't have a plus in front of them, that means they're a negative tuning. On this chart we've added the plus and the minus because it's not such a big chart. So this one's a negative tuning, which means I start from 0% and its ideal state should be 0%. And I'm going to dial up from 0 and I get 3.7. Again, this one is not very far out of balance, so I'm going to skip it and go on to the next tuning, which is balance. Balance is a positive tuning, so I'll start at 100. And this one's about 86, so that's pretty close. I think I'll go ahead and balance that one. So I'm going to make a note of that one because it's a little bit low. 86.8%. So again, I dial up to 100, and I switch from measure to balance by pressing the measure balance button, and I'll wait for a couple of minutes and then I'll come back after it's finished balancing. Okay, I'm ready to switch back to the measure position. Rub on the plate, and it balanced right up to 100%. Now if something doesn't balance right away up to 100% or down to 0 in the case of a negative tuning, it means that there are deeper issues that you need to look into. There are other intrinsic data field patterns that may be causing this not to balance to its fullest degree, either 100% for a positive tuning or down to 0 on a negative tuning. So I'm going to go down to the next tuning, which is blockages. So negative tuning has a minus in front of it. And this one, I'm getting about 11%. So it's a little bit on the edge. It's getting close to 15. And I think in this case, I'm going to go ahead and balance it. So I dial down to 0, and I'm going to switch into balance. And then I'll come back. Okay, now I'm ready to switch back into the measure position. Start at 0, and this one balanced right away. It's at 0.2%, which is fine. Now I'm going to press the down arrow again, and it goes to calcium fluoride, which is one of the cell salts. Each one of these are positive tunings, so I'm going to start at 100%. Take a reading, and this one's 84%, so it's a little bit lower than 85, so I'm going to make a note of that. 84.8. And I'm going to switch into the balance position, dial up to 100 and switch into balance, and let that balance, and then I'll come back. So now I'm ready to check that tuning again, and I go back to the measure mode and start from 100%, and it balanced right up to 100%. Now go ahead and go through the entire chart of your subtle balance program and test every one of the tunings, and then when you're finished, come back and join me. Now what I've just shown you is how to do a manual analysis and balancing, which means manually looking for each tuning that's out of balance, and then once we find one that's out of balance, we balance it directly right at that moment. Now this is not the normal way of working. Normally we work with the software and we go through and we find the tunings that are out of balance and we put them into a custom program. Now in the SE-5 software, as we go through our analysis, we'll measure each one of the tunings and it will automatically copy them into a custom program. When we're finished, we use the software then to sequence the tunings, which means it balances one tuning and then it waits and it balances the next tuning and the next tuning and the next tuning until it's finished. Now that's how we normally work. Normally we don't work doing one tuning at a time and then balancing each tuning, but you can also work that way, and I wanted to show you how you can do that with the Subtle Balance program. In the next exercise, I'd like to show you how to do a food compatibility test. We're going to test the IDF patterns of a specific food with the IDF patterns of our subject. In order to do this, you're going to need your input plate. So go ahead and insert your input plate into the SE-5. And you'll also need a subject. So go ahead and place your subject inside the cell as well. And we want to go to the biofield program. So go ahead and press enter under biofield program, and up comes the intake clearances. Go ahead and press enter again. And it asks you if you would like to run it automatically or in manual. In this case, we want to go into manual mode, so press the down arrow and it says manual. Press enter again and it loads the first tuning, ADDRMVNOWAM, which is a protection code. Now these intake clearances are similar to the first 5 initial tests. They're just a little bit more expanded form. So you want to test those first before you work on your subject. So let's start on the ADDRM protection. We start at 100%. And I get 100%, so that's okay. Now if you go to the next one, press your down arrow. Now this one is the same tuning, but it's also measured at 0%. It's also just about 0.6, so we're okay there. I press again and I get energy purity. Now energy purity is the same thing as blockages except in the positive fashion. So we want to test from 100% on energy purity, And if this reads lower than 85%, then you don't want to work on the subject. And then I barely turn my knob and I get a stick at 100%. So I press the down arrow again. Now these are slightly different tunings than in the initial test, but they mean the same thing. So 13-78, interference A, I get 7%. That's good. So I check interference B, 1.2%, interference C, 0.9%, and again, if any of these are over 15%, you'll want to look for a different place to work, different environment, and perhaps even a different angle or different direction. Interference D, 1.3. Now this one, interfering fields, can be balanced if it's out of balance. So let's test it and see if it's over 15%. Mine is only 1.6%, so that's not enough to balance. But if yours is even 8 or 9%, you might want to dial down to 0 and then switch into the balance mode for 20 or 30 seconds and then check it again. I press the down arrow again and I get barriers to rapport. Now my barriers to rapport with working on my subject are 6.9%. That's not very high, but normally I like to have them really down to 0. So I'm going to switch into the balance mode after dialing down to 0. Okay, I've been balancing for some time now. I'd like to switch back to the measure mode by pressing the measure balance button several times until it says measure. And I get 0.3%. Now that's much better. It's not exactly 0%, but it's okay. Press the down arrow again, and I get 9-49 general vitality. That's a positive tuning. So this is the tuning that I'm going to be using to test not only his vitality, but also then the compatibility with his vitality with a piece of food. So I'm going to check his overall vitality first. And I get 83%. So now let's try some food. I'll try an apple and we'll put it on the input plate, and I start from 100% again. I dial down until I get a stick and it brings it up to 100%. So from these readings I would suggest that the IDF compatibility between this apple and the IDF patterning of my subject is very good. Now you can try this with many different foods and get an idea of which foods might be compatible with the person's IDF patterns. Next, I'd like to show you how to run an automatic program on one of your subjects. So we've already done the intake clearances, we've done the initial tests, and we're ready to do an automatic balancing. So press the down arrow until you get to the biofield program, and then press enter. The first program is the biofield program, and if you press the down arrow, it'll go to the psychological program. And each one of these programs can be run automatically. Cellular program. Let's say we wanted to run the cellular program on our subject. So go ahead and press enter, and it says auto or manual, and it comes up auto is first, so go ahead and press enter again. The balancing time. Now I like to dial up from 0 and ask what's the optimal balancing time for each one of the tunings for this subject. I dial up from 0 until I get a stick, and I get 15.7. So I'm going to scroll up, goes up in half-second increments, so I can go up to 15.5. Then I press enter. Delay. The delay is how long between each one of the tunings is the SE-5 going to wait before it sends the next tuning. In other words, it's going to balance one tuning for the specified period of time, then it's going to wait, and that's how long the delay is in between each tuning. So I'm going to dial up from 0, and I get 6 seconds. I'm going to press the up arrow until I get to 6, and then press enter. Number of cycles. How many times is the whole program going to balance, and then it's going to repeat? So I get 2.8, which is about 3 times. So now I'm ready to start balancing the program. So I'm going to dial up to 100% because this is a positive program. I'm going to switch into the balance mode by pressing balance. So now I press enter and the program begins to start running. It balances the first tuning for our time period, and then it changes to the next one. Once you put in your installation CD, the software will automatically start in XP. So if you got an email to download your new software, then I'll show you how to go ahead and install it. So click on the link in your email, and your browser should open, and then you'll see a little window that says to save the file. So go ahead and click on Save File, and then the download should begin, and it'll download the entire file. If your link isn't active here in the email, then you'll need to highlight it and copy it. Go up to Edit and Copy, and then go to your browser and paste it into the browser window, and then press Enter. And from there you should get the same Save File box. So once it's downloaded, you'll see a little bar like this that says SE-5 1000 setup.rar.exe if you're using Firefox. If you're using Internet Explorer, you may have a little box that shows up that says Run or Would you like to run the software? So just double click on that or say yes, and then say OK. And now click on Run again, and now you're going to look for a folder on where to put that file. So now you're going to look for a folder and where to put that file, all these files. So you want to click on Browse, and if you're using Windows XP, then you'll want to put it in My Computer. So click on My Computer on your C drive, and then go down to Program Files, and then just say OK, and then go ahead and install it. Now if you're using Windows 7 or Windows Vista, I would suggest putting it into My Documents. So if you're using Vista or Windows 7, go ahead and click on My Documents and install it there, because Windows 7 and Windows Vista has security protocols that don't always allow you to copy files into My Programs. There is a way to do it, but it's a long explanation and you have to download other software, etc. So if you're using Vista or 7, go ahead and put it in My Documents, and if you're using XP, you can put it in Program Files. Then click Install. When it's all finished, it should go back to the window where it was, and then go ahead and X out your Downloads window, and you can minimize your Mozilla Firefox. Next, we want to put an icon on your desktop. So just go anywhere on the desktop where there's open space and right-click, use your right mouse click, and you should get a little window that shows up like this. Then click on New, and then you want to click on Shortcut. We're going to make a new shortcut. So then click on the Browse button and go to My Computer, go to your C drive. Now if you have Windows 7 or Windows Vista, the folder will be found in My Documents. It's going to be SE-5 1000. So look under My Documents if you have Windows 7 or Vista, and then I have XP on this computer, so I'm going to go into Program Files, and I'm going to scroll down until I find SE-5 1000. Now we need to find the SE-5 icon. There it is, SE5.exe. It's the little blue one. If it doesn't say exe, it'll just say SE-5, and it's the blue one. Just go ahead and click on that. Say OK. Click Next, and then Finish. And here's your icon then. It'll show up somewhere on your desktop. And then we're ready to start using the program. Before we begin to do an analysis, let's set up the software for the first time. So let's go up to Tools, and under Options you can set up a background image. So click on the background image box and then go to Browse, and then navigate to a folder where you have an image that you would like to use. Now I'm going to use an image that's in the SE-5 1000 software, so I go to My Computer, my C drive, and I go to Program Files. And from Program Files, then I look for the SE-5 1000 folder, and there's an image in here called Regaining. It's from my book, The Regaining Guy Software GIF. So I'm going to click on that one, say Open, and then apply it. And now you'll see the image appears over here on the right. You can use any image that you would like. Your own logo, for example, or you can use this image. And the same thing for a report. When you print a report, you can either put your own logo on there, or you can use the same image if you'd like. And then click Apply. And then Close. Next, let's enter the setup information. Go up to Tools, click on Setup Information, type in your name, and if you want you can put in your middle initial. It's up to you. And if you want, then you can put in your company name and enter your address, etc., phone numbers if you'd like. But what most important is that you put in the clearance number. So go ahead and type in 8974559, and that's going to be the clearance number that blocks any negativity that's coming from your CPU. And when you're finished, then click Apply. Data saved successfully, click OK, and then Close. And now we're ready to begin to do an analysis. So let's go up to Analysis, click on New Session. It automatically puts in the date for you. The description, I'm just going to put Test Session for today. But you could put in whatever kind of session you're doing at that time for your client. Under Operator, you can click Select. If you already have someone in here, you can just click on them and say Select. If you have not set up your operator, then you need to click on New Operator and then fill in first name, last name, and any info, like in my case the owner of the SE-5, or if you have hired help, then they would put in that information there. Click Close when you're done, and then you can click Select and add your operator. Same thing for client. Click on Select, but I don't have anybody in here yet, so we'll say Cancel, and I'm going to set up a new client. Now to add the client, you just type in their first name and middle name and last if you want. All the information that you'd like to add you can put in here. A note, I'm just going to put owner. You could put a little bit of note about this person if they're a friend or relative or whatever you want to put in there. Address, you can put in postal code and work phone and phone number. And now you can also add their photo. So click on Browse. This is me, so I'm going to put in my own photo here. Now you can put the photo in either up and down or sideways. I happen to have this one sideways. It doesn't matter which way you put it in. And then click on Add. And then this data is saved, and so now my first client is my own name, and then I click on Close. And now I can click on Select and select that client. And here you see the picture shows up. So the session name, I'm going to just put Test for July. And then I'm ready to put in a primary cause. If I wanted to search and focus in on the purpose of this session, I could put in, let's say, dry eyes. If that was what I was working on, I'll just type that in as an example. Now I'm ready to do the intake clearances, so I click on Intake Clearance. And here your amplitude should show up. The first one is positive because you can see over here there's a plus in front of the protection code. So I start at 100 and I start dialing down until I get a stick. Now I got a stick at 95.9%, so it's not really worth balancing. But if you get a lower reading than, let's say, 85%, then you'll want to dial up to 100 and switch into the balance mode on your SE-5 for maybe half a minute, and then come back and test it again and make sure it gets pretty close to 100. So now I press the Tab key and it goes down to the next one. This one's a non-positive. You see there's no plus in front of the code here, so that means we start from 0%. I start dialing up from 0 and I get a stick about 2%. So again, this is so close to 0 that I'm not going to bother balancing it, but if you wanted to, then you would dial down to 0, switch into the balance mode, and wait for about 30 or 40 seconds and check it again until it gets close to 0. Then I go down to energy purity. This is a positive, so I'm going to start from 100. Now this is what you check to find out if it's appropriate to work on the person or not, and if it goes down below 85%, then it's not appropriate to work on the person at this time. So mine's 92%, so that's okay. So I press Tab and go to the next one. Interference A, it's a non-positive tuning. There's no plus in front of the tuning there, so I'm going to start from 0, and I have just 1.4% interference on level A. So that's fine. Normally I don't balance these. These are tunings that indicate like electromagnetic imbalances or geopathic stresses or even negative thought forms in the room or the space that you're working in. So if you find that you've got a high reading above 15%, then you probably need to find a different place to work in until you find a clear space. So these are all very low. Mine's just very close to 0 or 1%. Sometimes you'll get a stick even right at 0%, and that's quite normal. Now I check for interfering fields. Start at 0 because this is also non-positive tuning. Dialing up and I get about 6%. So this one has a little bit of interfering fields, so just as an example, I'll go ahead and dial down to 0. I'm going to go into the balance mode on my SE-5, and I'll wait for a few seconds and then I'll go back and check it. Okay, so I've waited a little bit now. I'm going to switch back into the measure position. I start at 0, and now I get a stick right at 0. So next I go down to barriers to rapport, and hopefully I don't have any barriers to rapport with myself. No, they're at 0, that's good. And now general vitality. As I've talked about before, general vitality, if you find someone in the 70s, that's really normal, if they're kind of normal people. And if you find that it's in the 80s, you can usually tell that people are taking good care of themselves, doing, eating organic food, exercising, maybe even meditating, getting their body in shape, body, mind, spirit all together and focused, and keeping pretty healthy. To get above 90%, normally you need to be using something like the SE-5 or other subtle energy types of technology to get above 90% in our current day world because of the amount of toxins and negativity that's surrounding most every place these days. It's not everywhere, but it's in most places. Okay, so now I go down to acid-alkaline balance. I'm going to start from 100 because it's a positive tuning, and mine's about 99. So that's good, 99.1, so I don't need to balance that. But if yours is below 85%, it's better to go ahead and balance these right away. And my sodium chloride is also up around 97. So the acid-alkaline balance is basically the battery in your body. That's how you keep the plus and minus system running, and it's almost like the electrical charge, or holds the electrical charge in your system. And then the sodium chloride is the salts and the crystals in the system, and that is what communicates from one cell to another this information that's transmitting. It's almost like little crystal radios, how they transmit and receive information, almost just like a radio. When you're finished, go ahead and click Save. And now we're ready to begin doing our analysis. So I'm going to click on Add Tuning because I'm going to go with the normal system here. If you see, this is the normal biofield system, psychological, cellular, etc., right from the Biofield Research Manual. I'm going to start with the very first one, which is biofield system, and I'm going to take a reading from 100%. Now there are two ways you can go about this. You can either take a reading on each one of these, which is what I suggest because it's more accurate, or you could actually rub on the plate and then go down one at a time until you get a stick, which is not quite as accurate, but once you get the hang of it, you can do a really good job that way too. It's just a lot faster. So I did a reading on the biofield system and I got 96% on mine. So I'm going to skip down next to the psychological, and that's 97%. So what I'm looking for is something that's relatively low. Now my focus is on the dry eyes. That's my primary cause I'm looking for. Cellular's reading about 100, so that's okay. Nutritional metabolic. See if there's something in there. Oh, there's something. That's about 84.3%. So now I'm going to select that main heading. And now will come up the sub-programs. So you could, again, take a measurement on each one with the SE-5, or you can scan down using your stick plate and then scan down one at a time while rubbing on the plate until you get a stick on one of the subheadings. Okay, so I get a stick on minerals. I'm going to press select, and that's going to open up now the individual tunings. Now again, I'm going to go down one at a time, rubbing with my rub plate. I'm just rubbing on the plate while I'm going down one at a time until I get a stick. And this is, again, I'm looking for the primary focus of dry eyes. In this case I got a stick on chlorophyll. So now again I click on select, or you can also use the select button on your SE-5 to open up the actual individual tuning. Now this is a positive tuning, so I'm going to start at 100% and start dialing down until I get a stick. So I get a stick about 70%. Now this is the first time I'm making this amplitude measurement. So after I've done a balancing, I can come back and update this session, and I've got room to do a revision 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So after 6 times of balancing, basically it should be pretty cleaned up at that point. If it's not, then you can add that tuning into a session again. But generally speaking, if you've balanced all the tunings the first time and then you come back and check them all, you can go to revision 2 and you could take another amplitude reading. You'll see that generally they should be either balancing up if they're positive or balancing down if they're negative. So once I've got my amplitude, I can either press enter on my SE-5 or click with the add button, and that now saves it to my subject file that I'm making this particular session. And then I continue my scanning. So I'm rubbing on the plate and I'm using my down arrow, and you need to click in this window once you've closed that window to start using the down arrow, because otherwise the select button was highlighted. You may have noticed that. So now I'm rubbing on the plate using my down arrow one at a time, and I get a little stick on iron. So I'm going to open up that window again by pressing the select button on my SE-5. Again, this is a positive tuning, so I'm starting from 100% and I'm dialing down, going down. Yeah, boy, yeah, that one's pretty low. That's 51%. So that's good, because that's what I'm looking for, is something that's really out of balance. So now I'm going to add that to my session and continue scanning. So down arrow, So you can be doing the same thing on whatever you're looking for, and we'll keep looking here and see if I can find something else that's related to the dry eyes. Well, there's a little bit on sodium. Now, it didn't show up under sodium chloride under the overall reading, but it did show up here in relationship to the dry eyes. So I'm going to select that one, take a reading from 100, and I get about 56%. So that's good. We're going to add that back in. click back in the window and continue scanning down. Okay, I also get one on phosphorus. So I click select again. So I think you're getting the hang of this. I'll just go ahead and finish this last one and we'll go on further. So I get about 78%. So I add that one to the session. And then when I'm done, I can either go back to the subprograms here and continue scanning down the rest of them, and then eventually go back to the main programs and continue scanning all the different main programs in this list. And when I'm all done, then I click on Save, and that now saves all these tunings for my session. And of course, when you're done with all your analysis, then you would want to click on Save. But before we do that, I want to show you how to use the word tunings and also how to find a tuning. If you know that there is a tuning that you want to look up, you can click on Find Tuning, and up will come a search window. And you can either search by the tuning number here in this drop-down window or by the description. So I'm going to just type in the description, and let's just say I was going to look for a tuning for the adrenals. Let's say I had a feeling, or I knew that dry eyes might have something to do with adrenals. So I would start typing in the first few letters of adrenals, and here come up all the different programs and descriptions and tunings for adrenals. And then if you find one that you can either again go down the list one at a time until you get a stick, or if you see something that you know you need, then you would just highlight that, click select, and here again you can take an amplitude reading. Now this is a non-positive tuning, so I'm going to start from 0 and I'm going to dial up until I get a stick. It's about 16-17%. So I'm going to add that right to my session, and when I'm done I just click on Close, and that adds it to this session. Now word tunings, you can also put in word tunings. Now if you just want to type in anything you want, you could type in the word adrenals or dry eyes. Let's just, since I'm working on the dry eye thing, I'll just say dry eyes, and I can add that now to my word tunings and select it, and it adds it right to my session right here. When I'm all done, I click on Save, and now that session is saved for that person. Now we're going to balance the session that we made earlier. So go up to Balancing, Run Session. Now we could run the positive tunings, just the positive tunings at 100%, or we could run just the negative tunings at 0%, or we can run both at 50%. I'm going to run both of them at the same time, so I click on Both, and then here is your client list. If you have many clients, they'll show in this drop-down window, and then each session for that client will show up in this window. So you might have several sessions for that particular client, and they'll all show up here. So next, you want to click into the Balancing Time window and scan for how long to balance each one of the tunings. So I'm going to dial up from 0 until I get a stick, and I get about 6 seconds for each one. And now the delay, that's going to be how long it's going to pause between each one of the tunings, and I get 2 seconds. And then the number of cycles is how many times it's going to go in a circle and balance all of the tunings. So this one's going to take about 32 times. And then click on Run Session. Up comes the balancing window. Now I want to put my SE-5 at 50%, and I'm going to switch into the balance mode, and now I'm going to click on the Start button, as well as balance each one of the tunings. So next I'd like to show you how to set up a video, to run a video in your session at the same time as you're doing your balancing. So to do that, let's update the session. We'll go to Analysis and update the session that we were working on previously. And of course you could have set this up at the same time, but this way we get to see also how to update a session. Now all of your clients will show up here. I only have one client in at the moment, but once you have several clients, then you'll have many clients showing up here, and under each one you might have several different sessions for that client. So then I highlight the session that I want to update, and I click Update, and up comes the same information like we saw before when we made our analysis. Then I go to Geometric Sound, and for a video you need to click on Play During Balancing and play the video, and here click on Sound or Video and look for the video that you want to play. Now if you've used the SE-5 software before, with the old version, the video files will be stored under your C drive, under Program Files, and then under the Living from Vision folder, and the SE-5 1000 folder under Videos. So I'm going to choose the Nadi clearing video. So I click on Open, and then I save that information. And then of course you need to save your session as well. So now when we're going to do our balancing, in the next section when we do balancing, that video will play at the same time. Now we're ready to balance, since we've set up the video and we've done an analysis. So let's go up to Balancing. We're going to run the session. Now we could run just the positive tunings if we wanted to at 100%, or we could run just the negative tunings at 0%, or we can run both at 50%. Now if we run both of them at 50%, it usually takes longer than balancing just the negatives or the positives. But just for this demonstration I'll show you how to run both. So I'm going to click on both. Now here is where your client list is, and if you drop down this window, once you have several clients they'll show up here, and then under each one of each client you might have several sessions. So I'm going to click Done, and then I only have one session set up. Then click into the balancing time window, and I'm going to start at 0, and I'm going to dial up with my SE-5 until I get a stick. I get a stick at 7 seconds. Press the tab button and it goes down into the delay window, dial up from 0, and this is how long it's going to wait between each one of the tunings that it's balancing. And I just need to wait 1 second, so I leave it at 1. And then the number of cycles, how many times is the whole program going to repeat in a circle. And I get a stick at 24. So the total balancing time will take about 21 minutes 36 seconds. So now I click on Run Session, and I click the Start button. Now it begins running the video here and balancing each one of the tunings for the specified amount of time. You'll see the progress bar goes across here and shows you about how much time is left, and then it shows you exactly how much time is remaining here in the time remaining window. If you want to pause the program at any time, just click on Pause, and then you can resume it again, balancing. In this video I want to show you how to make a new session, but this time we'll use geometric forms and colors along with the balancing session instead of a video. And then also, once we've made a couple of sessions, we can do multiple session balancing. So let's go to New Session. I'm going to select the operator. It's going to be me, the same as it was last time. And this time I'm going to create a new client. We'll use George Apple, and we'll browse for an image. Now you keep your images wherever you would like for your subjects. Mine are in my pictures right now. So I'm going to choose that one, and I'm going to choose an image. And then I'm going to add that client into my client list. So now I'm going to select my client. Choose George. And for the description I will say George. We'll just call it George Test. You can call it whatever you want. Just give it some kind of name. Now here in the session name, that's very important because this is what will show up in your SE-5 if you download this session into your SE-5. And I usually like to put in the date along with the session name, because this will show me if I have several sessions in the SE-5 for standalone mode, then it'll show me that which date that particular session is. Okay, so then primary cause, we're just going to do a test here, so I'm just going to put in test for my primary cause. So there's not going to be really a general one. We could also type in the word general and then go through the intake clearances, and then we'll just skip forward, and then once I go through all these, then we'll come back. Okay, so I've done my intake clearances. I've got a vitality of 86.1%. Next I want to add some tunings, so I can start at the top and go down until I get a stick. Now I get a stick on cellular, so I'm going to select that one, and again I'm going to use my SE-5, and I get a stick on cellular imbalances. And we'll start at the top and go down one at a time. And I get a stick on cellular imbalances. So I'm going to select that one. I'm going to take a measurement. Now this is a negative tuning, so I'm starting from 0. And I get about 36%. So I'm going to pause here. I'll go ahead and add some tunings into this session, and you can too, and then I'll come back once I've got some more tunings in the session. Okay, I've added several tunings into this session, and now I'm ready to set up my geometric sounds and also the image bank. Now here you can put in the image for the balancing of your subject, so I'm going to add in the same image. And I'm going to click on image and go to image set, and I'm going to create a new image set. So we'll call this one George. So I'm going to make this particular image set just for George, and I go to the images. Now you'll find images in your folder where you have your SE-5 program. So it should be under Program Files, SE-5 1000, and then under Images. You'll find a lot of different images on here. You can also look at them by clicking on this little icon here. This was Windows XP. Vista and 7 are a little bit different, but you can show all these images at the same time, or you can do it via a list, which personally I prefer. Okay, so I start at the first one. I start scanning down one at a time until I get a stick. Okay, I got a stick on allergies, so I'm just going to add that one into the image bank. And then you basically just continue on from allergies until you get more and more. And also then you might want to add some colors. There are different colors in here, for example blue. So I'll add the color blue in here, and maybe I'll add the color red would also be good. And if you want to preview how the images will look, you start a preview and it'll show each one of the images one after the other, so you can see how they're working. When you're ready, then you click on Save, and then close the window. And here you can choose which image set you want to use for this session. So I'm going to click on George, and now you need to set the delay, how many seconds your delay is going to be between each one of those images, and I'm going to put about 12 seconds in between each. So now I'm ready to balance that session using the image bank. So I'm going to go up to Balancing, Run Session. Now of course I could run the positive tunings at 100 or the negative tunings at 0, but I'm going to run both at 50%. So here's your drop down window to choose your client. I'm going to choose George as my client, and George only has one session, but if he had more sessions then it would show up here under the different sessions that you've done. So I go into the balancing time, and I'm going to dial up from 0, and I get about 2 seconds balancing time. So I do the same thing for delay, and I get to stick at just about 1 second delay between each one of the tunings. Then the number of cycles, dial up from 0, and I get about 25 cycles, repeating the entire session, all the different tunings, one after the other in a circle. So it's going to take about 11 minutes and 40 seconds to balance. So I click on Run Session, and now I start the session. I put in my SE-5 in balance, and I dial up to 50% like we did before, and now I click on Start, and now the first tuning will start balancing. It takes a couple seconds for the images to start appearing, and then the first image will begin playing here. There's the first image, and that'll balance now for what I put in 12 seconds, and then it'll switch to the next image. And there's the color blue. So these will just keep playing one after the other until they're all balanced. Okay, now for the moment you've all been waiting for, how to balance multiple sessions one after the other. So let's say in the daytime you do several analyses, one after the other, and then when you're ready to go home you can set up the balancing for all of them at once, and it'll do one after the other. To do that, go up to Balancing and Run Session, and then Run Multiple Sessions. Up comes your multi-balance session window. You choose from your client list the first one that you want to balance. I'm going to choose this test for July, the dry eyes one. And we need to set up the balancing time for each tuning. Now I'm going to set them all just to 1 because I want you to be able to see how it switches from one session to the next. But normally you want to have you want to dowse for that and find out exactly how many seconds for the delay, for the balancing time, and the number of cycles. The interval time should be at least 10 seconds, but again you should dowse for it. I'm going to set mine to 10 seconds, but generally it needs to be at least 10 seconds between each client just to clear the energy field, and it may be more, so it's best to dowse for it. So add that to the session manager here, and then we're going to do George next. So I click on George's session, and I'm just going to set his all at 1 as well, so you can go on, so we can go on to the third one, and then I'll measure them for the last one. So I add him to the group of sessions that are going to be balanced, and then the third one will be Don's test number 2 program. So this one I'm actually going to measure each one of the balancing times. So I get 4 seconds for the balancing time, and the delay between each one of the tunings, I just get 1 second for that, and the number of cycles would need to be 6 times. So the interval between the 2 sessions doesn't really matter on the last one because it's just going to turn off anyway. So we're going to click on Add, and now we're ready to run those sessions. So I put my SE-5 in balance at 50%, switch into the balance mode. Now normally you're going to have sessions that have both positive and negative tunings in them, so most of the time you'll be wanting to set your SE-5 on balance at 50%. If you have only positive tunings in the sessions that you've made for all of those people, then you can run it at 100%. If you have only negative tunings in there for all of them, of course you could then run them at 0%. So there is a way to do that, but generally speaking you're going to be running everything at 50%. So I've set my SE-5 at 50%, and then I click on Start. And now it starts the first video as well as balancing each one of those tunings. And when it gets to the end, then it's going to pause for 10 seconds, and then it'll switch to the next person. Okay, so now it's going to take a 10-second pause. And now it's going to begin balancing George. And his is balancing the root chakra. Along with all the different tunings. And when that's finished, now it's going to wait for 10 more seconds. before it balances the last person. I only have 3 people in my session list, but you could have even 10 people. And now it's going to begin balancing then those last tunings for Don again, and he's doing the heart chakra with the heart chakra video, along with all the different tunings here, the metals, whatever comes up. And then it will stop. We can also balance using programs that are pre-done in your software. So if you want to balance a program, click on Run a Program, and then choose the program that you would like to run. Let's say we want to run the muscle skeletal program or parts of it thereof. Let's say we just want to do some muscle imbalances. So we click on Muscle Imbalances, we click on Add, and then we can choose other parts as well. Let's say we also want to do joint imbalances, so we choose Joint Imbalances. So you can add as many different things that you want from the left-hand side and put them over onto the right-hand side. Then we can set up our geometrics and sound from here. Here you can add your subject. So I'm going to go into my pictures and find my subject picture. If I'm going to balance myself, I choose myself. And then we can either use an image set, like I can use a drop down here and I can choose my image set from before if I want, or I could make a new one by clicking on image set and creating a new image set. Or I could also set up and play a video or a sound. Let's say we just wanted to play a sound. So this time I click on Sound or Video, I click on Browse, and now I want to go to a folder where I have my sounds. So I'm going to navigate to my folder where I have some sounds stored. I'm going to go back to my old SE-5 program, go into Sounds, and then I can choose one of these, like Bells Ascending, for example. Then click on Save, and now again we have to put in the number of seconds. I'm going to balance each tuning for 2 seconds. I'm going to have a delay of just 1 second, and we'll have 3 cycles. And then we're ready to run that program. So I click on Run Program, and I click on Start. Now you may not be able to hear the sounds that I put in because of the software I'm using, but it's actually playing sounds. And here, I'll try and see if we can, might hear it just a little bit in the background. Another new feature of the new software is that we can now have a list of potentized substances that we can choose from. So we can create a list. To do that, go up to Balancing and Potentize, and you can also get there from Data and Potentize, either way. But this way you can do it on the fly if you want to potentize something. So click on Potentize, and here you can click Add New, and it takes you to our potentizing list. Now I haven't made any yet, so it's empty. So let's go ahead and make some potencies. The first one I'll do is arnica. So the first one I'll do is arnica, and I'll do that at 6x, because that's one we use quite a lot. And for balancing time, it's best to scan for that to find out what the best amount of time is and then type it in. And this one I get 12 seconds, and then I just click on Add. And now I can make another one. Let's say I want to make Rust Talks. And I'll have a potency of, add my potency of 12x, and the time, about 13 seconds on that one. And then you can have different potencies. Let's say we want to make some arnica 12x. And we'll see how long to potentize that one. And that's about 14 seconds. So here you can have a complete list of many different potentizations that you might want to use, and then you can just quickly select them from a list. So no need to type them in or look them up. You can just go to Select, and let's say we want to make some arnica 12x. I click Select. Already puts in the seconds for me. And then I put the SE-5 into the balance mode at 100% and place my potentized substance of whatever I want to potentize into on the rub plate, and then I click Start. And now it's potentizing, and it's sending that information to the SE-5 and potentizing that. When it's all finished, then you can go back into the measure position and then click Close. This is another new feature of the new software. You can play multiple videos one after the other during your balancing session. To do that, you need to set it up in your session. So let's go to Analysis and Update a Session. I'm going to choose George's session. And now I'm going to click on Geometric Sound and browse for the first video. Now the first video I'm going to play is the root chakra. So I'll open up the root chakra, and now I can just keep adding more videos to this. So I click on the Browse button again, and next we'll do the sacral chakra. And then we might want to do the solar plexus as well. Or you could choose just those chakras that need to be balanced. Here is in your list, you can see it'll show you each one of the chakras. There's the root chakra, and if you keep going, you see the sacral chakra, and then it ends with the solar plexus. When you're all done, click Save, and then save that session. So now this time when I go to do my balancing session, let's click on George, click on his session, and I run my session. When I start, it'll start with the first video here, which is the root chakra, and I'm going to just skip forward so you can see. I'll skip close to the end. So when it finishes with the root chakra, then it's going to start playing the sacral chakra video, which is orange. So it just finished red, and now it starts with the orange. Now let's go forward on that one and go close to the end again. And this time when it gets close to the end, when it gets to the end of the orange, then it'll start balancing the solar plexus or the yellow chakra. And there it starts. Now this time, when it gets to the end of the third video, since I only have 3 videos loaded, it will start over with the red. So it'll go in a circle with all the different videos and play one after the other in a circle. So now it should start with the red root chakra again. And that way you can add as many videos as you want to your session. You can also use multiple videos when you're balancing a program. So you can go up to Balancing, Run a Program, and here you can add whichever sub-programs you want to balance, and then put in your balancing times. And here you can set up your, of course you want to have your subject set up, so I want to choose a subject. Choose myself. And then setting up your videos, you can run multiple videos at the same time. So I'm going to go to where my videos are at. And first I'd like to balance the third eye chakra, so I open that one, and then I just browse for the next one, throat chakra. And you can put in as many as you want. Click on Save, and now when I go to balance, it'll start with the throat chakra, and then it'll begin with the balancing with the third eye chakra. I'm going to go to the end of that so we don't have to wait so long. When it's finished balancing that one, it'll move right on into the throat chakra. Let's have a look at the Session Manager. We can now do things that we couldn't do in the previous software. So let's go to a Session Manager under Analysis, and now we have the ability to export a session and then we could send it to a friend if we wanted to, and they could actually import it into their software if they wanted to check it over or run it for us or do something like that. So let's say I wanted to export this session. I just highlight the session that I wanted to export, and I click the export button, and I browse on where I want it to go to. So I want to keep it under My Documents, and then I click on the name of the session that I want it to call it. So I'll call it Don's Dry Eyes. Don Dry Eyes. And click on Save, and then click on Start. And that then just exported that session into my Documents folder. Now if I were at the other end, say another person, then you could email that session, let's say, to someone else. And if I was on the other end of the receiving thing, then I would want to import that session back in. So I go to Browse, and I go and find that session, Don Dry Eyes, and click on Open, and click on Start. And now it just imported that session, and when we go back to Session Manager, now of course we're going to have two of those. This is the one I just imported, and that's the one that was the original. So if I open this session, let's say I wanted to update that session, I could then add on to it. You could even have a friend add on to it and email it back to you, and you would be able to then import it back into your program. So there it is. That's the same program I just had before. So we can import and we can export sessions. Of course, we can send any session to the SE-5 or many of them. We can check off all of these sessions, and I can send them into the SE-5. All I have to do is check off the ones I want, and I just click Start, and now it's actually sending those programs into the SE-5. On the SE-5 it says now transferring custom programs, and when it's finished it'll say session transferred successfully, and then click Close. We can also review a session. We can click on the session we want to review, and there we have all the information, and from here we could then print a report. We could send it to the SE-5, or we could export that session. You can do several different things. We can add a new session, just like going to Analysis and adding a session. We can also do it from the Session Manager. We can delete a session, like this one is a double. It's going to, I check off the one that I want to delete, and I click on Delete, and it gets rid of that session for me. We can also easily modify any of the programs that are already in the SE-5 software, or you can add your own. To do that, go up to Data and go up to Programs, and here if you wanted to modify the endocrine system, you just click on the endocrine system. You can double click on it, choose the subsection that you'd want to add a tuning to, let's say thalamus imbalances, and there we can just type in any tuning. We just have a new tuning here, and the description. And then you just simply click Add, and now you have a new tuning added to that subsection. So when you go to do your analysis, and we go into, let's just update a session. We'll choose one of the sessions, and we add a tuning, and we go to the endocrine system. We select the endocrine system, and then we go down to the thalamus imbalances. Then we'll find our new tuning there, and we could then add that tuning, take a measurement on it, and then add it to our session. And then we have a new tuning here. If we want to completely create a new program, then we go to Data and Programs. Just type in your name if you want to have your author of whoever wrote the program. Description, in this case I'll just say test program. I can make a new program, and then I just add that. And now I have my test program here as a main program. I just have to double click on it, and I'll need to create a subprogram first. Test subprogram. I can add that, and then I can just add tunings directly to that subprogram. And that's how easy it is to add new information into your programs. Create a new program, create a new subprogram, and then that'll add it to the entire database when you do your analysis. Another new exciting feature of the SE-5 1000 software is that now we can add an image to each and every one of the tunings in the database. So you can go up to Data, go up to Programs. I'm going to choose the cellular program, main program, and then I'm going to choose Cell, and under Cell I'm going to choose Cell Structure. So here, where it says Tuning, click on the Browse button, and then navigate to where you have some images of different organs, tissues, cells, whatever that you're going to put in as a tuning. And if you go to the SE-5 1000 website and log in, you'll find you can download a lot of different images for different organs, tissues, cells, things like that. And then all you have to do is click Update, and now this image, whenever this tuning is used in a session, this image will also show. I'll show you how we do that. So we close out all the windows, and I'll just update a session. Click on Update, choose a session to update, and now I'm going to add a tuning. I'm going to go to Cell, because that's where I put the image. I'm going to go to Cell again, and here under Cell Structure you can see under Image Path this one actually has an image and these don't. I click Select, I take a measurement, and add it to that session. Now when I click Save, it will now save this image along with this tuning. So when we go and do a balancing, so now I'll go into balancing, run a session. I'm going to run both positive and negative. Choose the program that I wanted to balance and put in a balancing time. I'm just going to put short times right now so that you can see it. And now every time that that cell tuning comes up, you'll see the image of the cell show up here in this window. So I'm going to start balancing the program. I put my SE-5 in balance at 50%. Start balancing the program. Now it's only going to show for about 1 second here because I've set each tuning to balance for only 1 second. But when it gets to that tuning, it should be the next tuning after this one, you'll see the cell show up, and there's the cell. So it sends that information of the image. Now a picture is worth 1,000 words, and we know how powerful images are, and that's why we've added now an image along with the numerical and name tuning. A very nice new feature is to be able to back up and restore your database, your entire data with all your sessions, all your programs and everything. To back it up, you just click on Database Backup, and now you want to choose where you're going to put that database, and this one is going by the date, so it says 7/20/2010 and I think that's a good way to do it. If you want to call it something else, you just rename it, but I think it's good to go by the date. And I'm going to put it in my documents, so I just click on Save and Start, and that was the entire database backed up. Now if I want to restore the database, now remember, whenever you restore the database, it's going to copy over your old database, so make sure you put in your newest database as your restore point. So I'm going to restore my database. I'm going to choose the one from today, which was 7/20/2010, and I click on Open, and then I click on Start, and it just restored the entire database. So it's quick, it's easy, and you might want to do that at least once a week, if not more often. Another feature we have is that you can now have a timer to see how long you've been working on a client. So you can just click on Start and then do all of your work. Let's say we were going to do a new session. Select my operator. And let's say I was going to do another session for George. And of course I'd put in all my session name and description, etc., etc. Do my intake clearances. I'm just going to skip that for now. And then I would add some tunings. So all the work that I'm doing now is all being counted by a timer. And then when I'm all done, I click on Save and I'm finished with my session. Then I can go up to Tools again, go to my timer and show the timer, and I can click Stop. It says I've been working for 52 seconds, and now I can add the time to that client. So already you can see I've worked on George before for 55 seconds. So now I select my client and I work on George, and here you can add some notes if you want. Maybe put the date in for George 7/20/2010, and then you add that and then close. So the next time you open this up, you'll see we have George when we worked on him for 52 seconds, and then I put in the dates here when I worked on him again. And so it'll keep track of all the time that you work on each client. When you're working on your programs in the database, you can also change the order of how the tunings appear. For example, if you wanted Biofield System to appear third, you just highlight that and then click down 3 times, and Biofield will now be the third one down, but you have to save the sequence in order to have it show up the next time. So if I close this and now I open programs again, then Biofield will be at the third position. If I want it on the first position, I click on the up arrow until it's in the up position and then click on Save Sequence. Same for any subsections. If you want to move any of the subsections up or down, you can move them and then click on Save Sequence. Or you can, if you make a mistake and you've changed an order of something and you didn't want it that way, simply click Close without saving the sequence, and it'll appear this way, the way that it originally was when you opened it. Same thing for tunings. If you open up one of the subsections, now if you wanted to, you could organize them by description alphabetically, or you can organize them by the tunings. Now if you wanted to save them in this order, then you would click Save Sequence. If you didn't want to save them in this order, you just click Close. You can also customize the look of your SE-5 1000 software now if you'd like. You can go up to Tools, go into Options, and here in this drop-down box you have basically different colors that you can put in for the background. So if I choose leopard, for example, and apply that, now you'll see that there's a different look to the buttons, to the background, and so you can choose different colors. I personally like the blue one, but you can choose whatever you want, and change the overall look of your software. A couple other features we have, of course, that we've had before is the calculator that you can use in case you need to add up any times or amounts for your clients, and then also a calendar and diary to keep track of your sessions. So first you need to choose a date for your calendar. Let's say we had something on the 30th of July. I would choose that, and I would say session balancing for Don, and that would be like a reminder for me to rebalance the session for Don Dry Eyes, for example. and then you can add that to your list, and then you can keep track of all that information. You'll have a list of all these different dates, and it'll show you then when you have an appointment and what's going on that day.